All right, we're starting up here. Okay, I'm going to call to order the meeting of the Ad Hoc Grant Search Committee for June 23rd at around 2:35 p.m. We have three of our members here: Diana Fetterman, Kate Swistak-Rooks, and Chris Fowles. And Ed Gibson may or may not join us. And I'm hoping to have two people from the Parks Commission join us. At least Dan LaValle and Sonia Palante were invited, and we'll see. We will proceed without them if not. But let's take a look around here. I'm sorry, guys, I did not intend to do yet another Zoom. And if I hadn't blown it, we would have had an outdoor meeting yesterday. Although with the torrid rain we had at about 2 o'clock yesterday afternoon, I don't think meeting in Conant Park would have been an optional idea either. We probably would have had to cancel. So I tried to post it. I was too late to post it for the Conant Park one when I realized it was like I missed a whole day there last week. So we're back on Zoom, but hopefully not for long, and we can figure out a different time for these meetings too, which may be allowing us to meet in person. So we'll figure that out as we go along here. But let's move forward. We'll call this to order. I don't see anybody waiting for open time for the public at this point in time. So what I'm going to do is pull up just briefly. I sent it around just real quick, but hopefully you got a chance to just look at it very briefly. It's old news at this point because it's been so long, but this was our minutes from May 12th. Which I'd like to get under review and approved. Basically, these were some of our beginning talks about the shared spaces and streets grant. This was the time where we had invited the Norris School principal in to talk to us. We'd already learned that probably our idea of a feasibility study to have Gun Road extension become one way was not eligible. Not that the project wasn't eligible, but the idea of a feasibility study was not doable by itself as a grant for this particular program. But nonetheless, we talked about the ups and downs of the parking situation and the pickup line up at the school. And Aliza came in and talked to us about some of her ideas and just concerns about even coming up Gun Road, how we could make that safely, maybe by having the cars coming on the backside of the school rather than staying on the street, etc. So we had Randall and Ian with us and talked about those kinds of ideas. And basically we're in agreement that the whole notion of Gun Road extension could not fit into this time frame for this particular grant, but that we really needed to continue trying to work with everybody to try and solve this problem. That would be a great way forward if we could do that. So we'll keep on our lookout for other possibilities that might satisfy that. And then we switched to the whole notion of sidewalks and talking about looking at the sidewalk from Town Hall to High Street. But the grant allows basically for new sidewalks to be built rather than improving sidewalks. And hence we landed on the idea of the sidewalk from High Street to Pomeroy Meadow to put in a short sidewalk in front of the cemetery. So this was our beginning discussion on that. We talked about some of the questions we had about what would be required and the need probably to touch base with historical and the cemetery commission for the next meeting on that. And that was kind of what we ended up doing with that one at that point in time. And then we started the beginning discussion of the Highland Valley grant. Joan was still looking for partnerships with other towns at that point in time and trying to figure out what exactly they were going to ask for. And then we jumped over to the park grant update. And this was, I believe, after, this was after the meeting we'd had with Melissa. So this was a bit of a summary. This was a bit of a summary of the meeting. We've got the notes from Kate, I think, that I had attached actually to the last minutes, but we kind of did an overview of the notes and just noted the kind of things that she was recommending, and just reiterating this notion of having a more accessible park as a first priority rather than focusing directly on the new park equipment, although that may be needed, that there would be other opportunities and probably other grants that were more in tune with that request compared to this particular one. So all in all, I think this captures all the work we did on that meeting. We had 3 different things that we were trying to juggle at that point in time. And then the next meeting on May 19th, we went into more detail. We really focused on the shared streets and spaces one with the Stantec people there. So that's the next one that we'll look at for the next time we meet. But does anybody have any thoughts or comments or questions on this? And if not, could we push forward a motion to approve the minutes, or would you like to scroll a little slower? Or
I think they look great. I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from May 12th.
all right,
I'll second it.
all right, thanks. All right, and just voice vote as usual.
Brooks, aye.
Oh, Diana, aye.
All right, and Chris Fowles, aye. Okay, good. We'll be done with that. Perfect. Okay, so as we last left, I just wanted to give us an update on some old business. First of all, I guess the first one that comes to my mind, there is Highland Valley, excuse me, got notification that they are going to be eligible for their interview. That's the next step in the Highland Valley grant process, and that is scheduled for Monday morning, the 28th at 10 o'clock. And Joan is going to be on that, along with, I believe, the COA director from Westhampton. And Kate, I'm wondering if you could be on that to represent us, because you're the more knowledgeable one of the subject matter than any of us, if that fits with your schedule.
This is Monday the 28th at, you said Monday the 28th at 10. I did see that.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna block it on my schedule.
Okay.
Grant application.
I need to double check with Joan how that's going to happen. I don't know if it's a Zoom or a conference call or what. I'll get more clarity on that. Diana, if you wanted to be on that, you're more than welcome to. I just wanted to have key people there for sure, that had the subject matter knowledge. So up to you.
Sure. I'm happy to do that.
Yeah,
Okay.
Do
you want to
I
join
don't
in?
think I'm a pro in that.
I think one person
No,
should
that's
be
okay.
sufficient.
Yeah.
I mean, the questions that they're going to ask are probably pretty simple.
I would hope. I mean, you know, I don't know.
Mm.
And theoretically, I mean, the COA should be the ones answering it all. We're just helping facilitate, really. So I'm assuming Joan and the person from Westhampton will be able to deal with whatever the questions might be. But anyway, that is scheduled. So that one is moving along. So Kate will assign you that, okay? And I will get back to you with how
Sure.
that meeting is going to happen, okay?
I can reach out to
right.
Joan. I'll just shoot an email to Joan and
Okay.
and it just to ask. I can do that.
Sure, good, that's fine. And then the other one is on the Shared Streets and Spaces grant. Excuse me. I believe I copied you all on an update that we had that occurred last week. You may not have caught up with your emails yet. We basically had a request from the state DOT to Randall saying that a couple of things that we had put in there, I believe it was something for engineering design or something in there. I'm forgetting what it was right now. There was one category anyway that we put in the grant budget that was not eligible, but they wondered if maybe we shouldn't consider drainage instead. So Rick from Stantec jumped in on that and said that, you know, he would be glad to work on that. And so this was like, again, Wednesday afternoon, and they wanted an answer by Friday. Now, mind you, town hall is closed on Friday. So anyway, Rick went back and forth with his team, and they decided to take out whatever DOT was not enticed with and put in some drainage ideas. And this, did you all see that email I sent? I'd have to dig it up here, but it was basically, the state itself was suggesting the more drainage, because if you recall, they had wanted to put in a berm along the highway,
Mhm.
which Ian thought was not terribly necessary. He didn't think it really helped on the safety thing whatsoever, but they seemed to have a different idea about that. And so, long story short, Rick from Stantec reached out to the district engineer people to get more clarity about what they wanted. And they basically suggested that we focus on some drainage. So he went ahead and did some further estimations and work on putting in another catch basin, or I think 2 catch basins along the highway. And this would be to take care of any drainage should there be a berm included along places where it isn't included right now on Route 10, so that the drainage would be more appropriate according to them. So Rick did that and said, to me that, once we get underway, if this happens, we can be discussing that. He said, I personally measured things and didn't think that the drainage was going to be necessary. The drainage was going away from where it should be anyway. It seemed like it would flow in the right direction without causing problems. But the district engineer, from I guess basically photos and designs, felt that that was not maybe true. So long story short, we abided by the district engineer's advice, and that increased the budget from about 90,000 to 123,000. So that was the new budget that Rick presented. He had it all
From
vetted
90,000 to what?
by 123, I believe. So he had it all vetted by the internal folks at Stantec, and then got it back to me like Thursday night. And then with Friday being a holiday or not, a non-work day, basically I didn't get a hold of Randall or Ed, and just decided I would just submit it because I didn't think any of us would have anything more to add to what they had already spent time doing. So we took the tech people's advice and submitted the budget before noontime on Friday, and I got a response saying that they had indeed received it. So we know that we did whatever they asked us to do. So that's, I guess, a good thing.
Thank you for taking care of that.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I'm glad. I mean, boy, these technical assistance people have just been right on the ball with this one. I'm just so impressed. So anyway, we are today on the 23rd, and I think we should know certainly within the week. Definitely before July 1st, we will get an answer on this one, I'm pretty sure. So if we don't know by Friday, I would think by Monday we would hear something. So I'm hoping that it's going to be positive and that we'll be able to jump on it as quickly as we can, because Rick had also sent out some sample forms of expedited ways that he had worked before with other communities. If you remember, he talked about that, having a short list of other contractors and, all these things that really shortcut the normal DOT process specifically for this grant, because it's intended to be a quick action grant. So those are with both Ed and Randall, and hopefully if we hear the word, we'll be able to jump on this and make something happen. So that's where those stand. But I, relatively optimistic on both fronts. So we'll see. Okay. So with that in mind, since then, the park grant is our current baby, obviously. I did go to the parks meeting last week, I guess it was, and talked through the application a bit with people, and we talked around what they might want to do and what not want to do, and came up pretty much with the idea that I think they really would like to do the playground equipment, but certainly those were not the signals we were getting from the state. So we're on the agenda again for the next parks meeting, which is June 30th at 6 p.m. at Conant Park, weather permitting. And we can talk about it in a bit more detail there, but where we left it the other night was that with the idea of the accessible walking path first as a priority, given what we were probably going to be spending, for example, on this sidewalk idea by the cemetery, the dollar cost was going to be prohibitive to try and do a walking path all the way around the park, given just that, even though we would not be putting down asphalt, it would be some sort of packed gravel kind of surface, most likely, that would be appropriate for strollers or wheelchairs or walkers or whatever. So where they ended up going with their thought was from the library parking lot along the tree line to the right. So if you're facing the pavilion from the parking lot, going up to the right behind or kind of alongside the tennis courts and where the new pickleball court would be, straight on out to Route 10. So joining right out onto Route 10 where the existing sidewalk already is. So that would allow people that are walking on Route 10, Clark Street, whatever, at least to take a detour into the park and get partway in there, feeling that was pretty level and not needing a whole lot of, real complicated construction. The side going into the left of the pavilion from the parking lot would be maybe a second phase. And again, just assuming on cost, not really knowing anything about cost. And that probably trying to keep as close to the pavilion as possible rather than over by the tree line to the left, because the ground is less difficult. So it's flatter. It's not going to require a whole lot of manipulation, but basically go across toward the dam and over to Clark Street. But that would be probably a second phase. We were not sure about the cost of the splash pad and where that could go. Dan had done a preliminary drawing about where he thought a splash pad would go, but we really need to understand more about what the source of water needs to be, the volume of water that it would take, depending obviously on the size of the park, the splash pad itself. Whether that water is recycled, I doubt it for health reasons. What else? What other kind of maintenance it needs, etc. So all of those things I put in Dan's category for him to investigate more about the cost of that. And he had mentioned that he had known about the splash pad up at Nonotuck. So I did go up and I sent you guys some photos the other day of the splash pad at Nonotuck, which is really not terribly big. It looks like it's got about 5 stations or so. It's definitely smaller than Look Park, but was not in operation yet anyway. But trying to find somebody like at the Parks and Rec department in Easthampton to answer some questions. I just passed on the information to Dan to try and connect with somebody to find out any of the answers to those kinds of questions, to see whether we would have a possibility of including that in this grant or not. I think the thinking at Parks Commission was that it might be too expensive to try and do part of the walking path and the splash pad, but I said, look, we can put in for the 100,000, and then we've got our 66% match, whatever, right? So it's 150 total that is really our working budget, if I'm understanding our situation correctly. Oh, we just lost Diana. And therefore, we shouldn't assume the cost of the splash pad. We should do better to figure out, is it really out of our wheelhouse? Then fine. If it's really too expensive, okay, but let's make sure it is before we just sort of cross it off. Okay.
Right.
So Dan was going to get back on that. Let me let Diana back in here a second. Hopefully. Okay. Are you back? Good. Okay.
Is it just me?
Yeah, just you. Yep. You just disappeared on us. That's okay.
Oh.
So Dan was going to check on that. And then furthermore, he had alerted me to these exercise stations of sorts up at Mill Pond, So again, I took a ride up there and took some photos, which I also sent to you separately, just to show you. And those are interesting. They're kind of grouped together, though. They aren't the same idea that I was having in mind, which was to be walking and then having, you know, a break to do a particular kind of exercise, walk some more, have another break. These are a bit more closely grouped together. And if you looked at some of the instructions on the signs, which I thought the signs were very informative, they seem, to me anyway, a bit more heavy duty kinds of exercises. They aren't necessarily what I would call senior level exercises. And I think there may be other options for that. So that was just for information's sake at this point in time.
Yeah, I think that could also be another phase, right? Like I feel like the exercise stations are something that could be easily added
Right.
to an existing project for a very clear amount of cost.
Yeah, they could be, I think, a second phase and something different if we had to, because I think we have to do more research on those. And I was talking to somebody the other night who recommended that we take a look at, there's a park over in Belchertown, which I can't recall its name right now, but it's basically an ADA, you know, accessible park specifically. And the playground equipment, everything is really very, very well done and very both age appropriate as well as accessible. So they really recommended that we do a little bit more scouting out too. So anyway, just to say, we don't have any more detail on that. So where we left things the other night was that Dan and Sonia were going to develop the 2-page narrative. Sonia had a few ideas of things that she wanted to include. So I said, well, you know, get your few paragraphs off to Dan, and Dan, you compile the couple pages and shoot it off to us so that we can be working on it. And, you know, we will gladly cut it from 3 pages to 2 or whatever we need to do, fill in the blanks, whatever we can. But you guys have really got to do this. So that was left to them, and I have seen nothing. Mark,
We also need to try to do if that's what we're going to do, then we need to post like whatever we need to do in Easthampton or Westfield to see what they would be interested in for a local park, right? That's what Melissa said.
Yeah, we'll come back to that in a sec. Yeah, that whole environmental justice issue. The other part was Mark Reed was going to be getting the deeds and all that kind of information, the technical location, all of that kind of stuff, and sent to us. And then I asked Randall if he had a separate maintenance budget for the park. That was one of the questions on there too. So we've reached out and kind of left it in their hands, and they were invited to a meeting today, but I'm afraid that they're thinking that they don't need to get it to us before the 30th, which is not the case, since I see nobody here, but we are stuck on those parts. That was the assignment. So before we jump on to Kate's thing briefly, Diana did do the other issue here about follow up on the open space and recreation plan, and then describing the SCORP. So how our project would fit into the SCORP. So Kate, you probably haven't had a chance to see this. I'm just going to leave it here on the screen.
Yep.
So this is what Diana has done and put into Google Docs. The Google Doc, by the way, in Word is just kind of wonky. The formatting is all over the place. So at some point in time, I don't know, whenever we get around, if we get to this point of finishing this grant, I may just pull it out of Google Docs and put it just in a separate Word document. So if I have to enter this online, it'll be easier to enter from, because the formatting is just strange in Google Docs. So anyway, Diana, why don't you talk to us a little bit about how you found this? Was this complicated? Did it seem to fit?
No, it was pretty straightforward. I just took those, is it 4 goals?
Yeah.
And, you know, just kind of riffed on that. I don't know how persuasive it would be or anything. Yeah. I mean, yeah. we just say it'll meet the goals, and because we don't have a whole lot of details, it's hard to go into detail, but
Yeah, I know
whatever.
until we hear more and whether they want to try and include the splash park in there or not. I mean, that may not, we could talk about that in the future. If they decide to drop that idea,
Yeah,
we could say that in another phase, this is the plan.
and,
Because
and
again,
as
that was
well,
covered as,
and it would
yep,
be also the plan to make a playground accessible, I guess.
correct.
That's what I
Correct.
was trying to
Yeah.
ask before. I was outside, so I apologize. Maybe that's why my Wi-Fi
No, it's
wasn't
okay.
working.
Yep.
But
Yeah, it's okay.
did they mention at the parks meeting about whether the path, part one or part two of the path, would go next to the playground or the future playground? Because I don't
Part
see
two
why
would,
we're,
part
well,
two would, if it went to the left of the pavilion over toward Clark Street, that would be more toward the playground area.
okay. So it would go
So
across
yeah,
somehow
well,
across that
across
bridge.
where that dam is, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, not going down the hill where the bridge is. I mean, that would be a construction nightmare, I think. So they were talking about going straight out somehow.
Oh,
Um,
okay. All right.
so not
I
not
just feel
going
like,
down the hill where the,
yeah, I feel like their hearts
yeah,
aren't really in a path. Nobody was thinking about a path, and everyone was thinking
yeah,
playground. And then we got the feeling from
hmm,
the state that a
right,
playground that's not accessible would not be very realistic.
yeah,
So we're kind of
yeah.
like in a bind, I
Especially for,
feel.
I know we are still, and it may just be the parameters of this grant is, somewhat more, not necessarily restrictive, but it's much more specific in terms of what they're wanting to achieve by awarding these things.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess we'll have to see if we get something. I mean, I'll certainly reach out to Dan and after the meeting here and see if they have anything, and if not, to get us something by Friday so that we can start at least thinking about what they're trying to talk about here.
Yeah.
Because we've got to figure out other documents that need to be included as well. But so I think the splash park could be talked about in the future if that were a desire, if we can't fit it in now.
Hmm.
And then, oh yeah, Mark Reed was also going to do some sort of rough sketching drawing, I believe, too, along with getting the deeds and some of the other stuff that was necessary. So, um, I guess I should have reminded people yet again that we had a meeting today, but I didn't. They were invited the
Can't
first
can't
time,
do
so
everything. Yeah.
yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, I figured if people put it on their calendar, they'd remind it. But so yeah, I don't
Like
know
the
about
only
the
other thing is like we have until June 30th. So I just wanted to, if there's any other questions we need to ask Melissa, and I kind of feel
yeah,
like she was very open about us going back to her with any additional questions we have for her,
yeah,
that if
yep.
we have the next meeting on June 30th, it's going to be too late
I
to,
know,
give her any
correct,
other feedback.
Yeah.
absolutely. So those were the two next thoughts, Kate. Um, let's see. Just one thing, Diana, one thing on this renovation on the last paragraph. I was thinking this renovation of neighborhood parks, we might put in there if we can find a little bit of I don't remember when Conant Park was built originally. I think the pavilion was like 65 or something like that. But I mean, just to give a sense of how old this park is,
Okay.
um,
That's a good point. Yeah.
and that nothing really has, whatever's here has been there for a number of years.
Yeah.
And for what it's worth, the pickleball court bids came in and everyone is overbid. So we are completely stuck. Could not award the contract to anybody. So the pickleball people are meeting to try and figure out how they can fundraise in a hurry. because they've got to answer the bid by the 30th as well as to whether they're accepting anybody or rejecting all of the bids. And, if they
I
reject them,
think
the costs go up
I
even
got an
more for
email.
another year.
Yeah, I got an email saying that they had some loans up front.
They're
Just
talking
came
about
in.
that. Yeah, people are volunteering to chip in some money, I think, up front. So, but it's like 25,000 over bid. So it's crazy.
I would think that there are grants out there for this, but maybe not
Yeah,
necessarily
well,
state grant.
not something we can do in 2 weeks' time, though.
No, I know that. I'm just wondering why nobody has thought about that. Doesn't seem like they have. Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Anyway,
I don't want to raise my hand.
no, 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 no. So the biggest things we've got to deal with, I think, are how we would tackle, assuming we're going to try and go forward with this. What are the questions we need for Melissa? Because Kate's absolutely right. We need to be able to contact her before the 30th with an email, at least, of questions. I don't know that we need to talk to her, but at least an email of questions. And then figure out how we would approach this whole environmental justice notion. And if we're talking about just putting in a path right now from Route 10 to the center toward the library, I mean, why would any other community even care?
Well, that exactly. And it lowers our ability to get points.
Right. So the only thing we could do would be to talk about the fact that we're trying to make this more of an accessible park. And one of the ideas that we would like to pursue would be the idea of the splash pad. So
We could I feel like we could almost directly ask her that question and say, we heard your feedback, but it's making it so both projects are not likely achievable within the budget, the $150,000 budget.
yeah, yep. So jot down a question along that line there, Kate, because I think let's keep track of those, because I think we need to do that. The other notion is, with Easthampton already having a splash park, at Nonotuck, I don't know why they would necessarily think that they would need to come to Southampton to enjoy one. I have not looked into Westfield. I would assume, well, I wouldn't assume that there isn't one there. I mean, I don't know if there is one in Westfield or not. So it's hard to know. I guess I'm still a little bit unclear about how we can really address that environmental justice question. The only thing I remember from one of the things she said was, if we were addressing it because there's a community of a different language ability, then we would have to advertise, say, in Spanish or whatever that language was, which is fine.
It's for income. It was not for, it's for minority. I think it was different for both Easthampton and Westfield. It was for minority and for income.
Right. So it wasn't a language issue in these particular cases. So, she wanted us to go out, remind me though, she wanted us to be there and talk to people that were visiting those parks to find out if they'd be willing to come to Southampton's park. Is that the idea?
Or what they would want what they would want. Maybe we could just make it like more general. So I think that's a question we want to ask Melissa, is how do we pose the questions to another community to make it fit your requirement?
Yeah. Because I think I'm a bit stymied on that, where where we would, I don't know, it almost feels like we'd be trying. I mean, I realize it's a criteria question in terms of the environmental justice nature of it, but you don't want to be designing something around people from another community when our own community has really had no say in it. So it's like, I'm a little confused as to which cart is before the horse here, but I understand why they want the environmental justice, but I think we're just trapped in between, as we saw from our previous grants. We're not really fitting that definition. So how do we make it work to our advantage, I guess, is still not totally clear in my mind.
I think the only way that it would clearly work is if there weren't enough applicants.
Yeah. But I mean, having her explain that whole environmental justice thing again to us a bit better, I
Yeah.
think is what we need. And I think you had mentioned one earlier about the surface of the walkable path, and I'm assuming some sort of packed gravel type surface rather than asphalt. We definitely wouldn't want to put asphalt in the park. We want to have a, a water, what do you call it? Not impervious. You want a
Permeable.
surface that the water
I
will
think
drain
they call
through.
it
Yeah,
like stone dust.
It's
Like,
it's like a
maybe. Yeah,
compacted stone. It just needs to be able to tolerate drainage and not
right,
get really grooved when, like, it doesn't have to be
right,
asphalt path. It can be flat,
right.
accessible crushed stone.
Yeah, yeah, or something like that. That you can push a walker or a wheelchair or a stroller, over easily. That's the challenge is, getting them so it's packed solid enough so that the wheels don't dig in and they're easily movable if we're going to make this ADA accessible. So,
I think the path
any
around
other
Lake Gray
questions?
in Holyoke is
Yep.
is stone dust, and it's an ADA path.
Okay. Okay.
If you're ever out there.
So, okay. Other questions that we can think of that we need to clarify here. I was gonna pull up, and thank you for doing this, Diana. This is certainly a great start. We may end up tinkering with it a little bit once we know
Oh, yeah,
more.
that's fine, and I'll try to find out some history of Conant Park, or I could just say in the '60s there haven't been any major.
Yeah, we could, I think, and not, not going
Yeah.
into detail. I don't know how long, for example, the playground equipment has been there or whatever. There may be, I don't know. It's certainly been a while. I don't
Yeah,
think it's
I
ever
can ask
really,
that, and I'll just do it in Google Docs. I kind of
yeah,
feel like
somebody,
worrying a little bit too much about the environmental justice, only because my experience with the Manhan Meadows, it was the same kind
yeah,
of question, and all we said was, this could, uh, the bikeway when it goes through could link to environmental justice
yeah,
communities. That's all we said, and
yeah.
we got the
And
grant.
and right now, people do come to Conant Park. People do rent out the pavilion from other towns.
Yeah.
We pass out licenses to rent the pavilion, and people
Hmm.
come for their graduation parties or picnics or whatever. So to that extent, we do have other people that are non-resident use the park from time to time. Um,
Yeah. I
so
mean, I think it's important for towns that do have
yes,
demographic
yeah,
segments like that, but I think they also know that many towns don't.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
You definitely needed it. If you look on this thing, you definitely needed it for the acquisition project, which we are not doing, right? So we are not getting new location. So under that development and renovation project, that's where we fit. But then number C, it serves the environmental justice population or area that lacks park resources. Um, yeah, it's a challenge. It's a challenge. Um, so this is the guts of the application right here in terms of these 2 pages, which is,
Mhm.
like I say, what I was really hoping we'd have something that we could toss around today, but we'll catch up with Dan and see if they can get us something by Friday at least. So, because this is really the main part of it. This is the maintenance budget I asked Randall for. Any of this other stuff doesn't really fit. Environmental education and interpretive services planned, nothing would fit right there.
I think so. Remember, I think we do education services at the site. We were talking about how what's the educational series that is it Concom was doing? I don't know. I took a picture of it being posted in
No,
down
well,
on
it
that.
was that was the open space meetings though. That was a special series, but this is more, I thought this, well, maybe I read it wrong. I thought it was more like signage along the, what did I read here? Hang on, back up. Where did I see it? Interpretive services. So like if you had something you were trying to point out at the park and you needed a sign in, Braille or something like that. That's how I interpreted that.
Oh,
But
see, I interpret it as like they were doing something about climate resiliency as an educational series at the park.
we could certainly throw that in. I mean, that's nothing wrong with adding that part in, because that's definitely one of the whole topics that they had for the neighborhood outreach program grant. Was one of the topics was on climate resiliency. So that is very true. So I just,
maybe it's a stretch, but I feel like it's a relevant stretch.
it's relevant enough. I mean, I think it is a bit of a stretch, but I think it's true. We could just talk about how recently, the Open Space and Recreation Committee, because again, one of the requirements for this, right, is having the Open Space and Recreation Plan. So we can talk about as an outgrowth of that, the Open Space and Recreation Committee received a neighborhood outreach grant and recently concluded a series of educational events for landowners based at Conant Park, and one of those specifically focused on climate resiliency. So we can certainly throw in 4 or 5 sentences there. And that's, let's see, is that all part of the same narrative? Am I in the same, I think I'm in the same overview, am I not? Yeah. So it's all part of that 2-pager. So yes, I think we could put it in there. I think it's just a matter, I may have just interpreted it wrongly. I was thinking of, for some reason, I was thinking more of signage, and I don't know what I was thinking.
Maybe it's both things.
It could be. It could be. Figuring out the cost is going to be a bit of a challenge unless Mark and crew come up with something for us here. Not sure how they're going to do that. So those are the, still the big question marks. And then there's a narrative that goes with the budget that explains what it is. And so, once we figured that out, if we had 100,000 that we ask, hang on, let me get this right. If the project was 150, the requirement is 66% reimbursed from, or we'd be eligible for 66% reimbursed through this grant. Is that not right?
Right.
So do we only get then the 50,000 through this grant? And we have to come up with 100?
We would get the 100,000. So you get 66% reimbursed.
Right. So
we would get 100,000 and we'd have to throw in 50.
Right. So is our total 100 or is the total 150?
If you apply for 100, and if you apply for the full amount, it'd be 100 total eligible project costs. So if you put 150 in that line, the next line would be 100, and the municipal share would be 50.
Wouldn't the second line be the 50, the park request? 50% of the total project cost.
No, it's 52 to 70 in our community, 66%.
Okay, so
that would be, it'd be 66% of the total project cost, which would be $100,000, and then the municipal share would be our contribution.
okay. Okay, and that would be part of what we would do through community preservation and or donations or whatever. Okay, I gotcha. All right, so that's the idea. What is still a little bit fuzzy to me is down in this last bullet here of broken into 2 separate fiscal years for the renovation projects, which this is, where 22 is associated with design and 23 is with construction.
Right.
So, I mean, it doesn't sound like we can somewhere, didn't they, I forget, somewhere didn't they talk about some of the engineering costs and things do not qualify in the budget? Let me see what I highlighted here, just a second. Let's go back to Melissa's notes here. So we needed, so this plan of the site, locus map, these are all the things in blue that we need. Evidence of a public meeting on proposed projects. So whatever we decided to do.
You have to like give them the flyer.
Right. So that's where I'm like I say, I think we need more clarity from Melissa, what we're, you know, given given what we're trying to propose, how do we really interest people in other communities in this project, I guess.
I think it might be just a technicality.
Yeah. So the usage report was only if it was, you know, the bigger project, which is not ours anyway. The other challenge is going to be the municipal votes. I mean, we would have to have a special town meeting before the end of the year, which is not impossible, although it usually is more in January, February. We did one last year in COVID times in October because we were still outdoors and we didn't want to freeze. I don't know yet whether this year we'd go back to our normal January, February kind of time frame, in which case this goes right out the window because this has to have a vote before the end of December.
Correct. I think we'd have to have a meeting.
We would have, well, we'd have to. It's just, the point is, it's not, I mean, it costs money to have a special town meeting, and we'd have to have enough stuff on the warrant, not just this, to make it worthwhile. Because there's usually a lot of different things that we have to cover when we have a special town meeting. So anyway, we got things to figure out. I wanted to just find the budget one, which I can't pull up right now. But anyway, go ahead. So it just seems like there were a couple of things that the budget was, you know, precluded on. If we look back at the notes that you took with Melissa, that we can't ask for in our overall budget situation. I'm going to see if I can just find that for a second here. Let me pull that down. Let's see if I can find that again. Let's see if I can just pull this up. So here were our meetings notes with Melissa, some of these. Yeah, okay, so this is what you talked about. So this is what she told us before: recommended advertising going to a neighboring park to ask questions about what they would want in a neighboring town. I mean, I guess it's just showing that we've done the outreach, not that we necessarily accept or agree with what people say they want. I mean, I don't.
You know, maybe the pointed question to ask is, if you were to go to a town, a neighboring town, what would you be interested in utilizing in a park? That's kind of how I saw it. Like, you literally would just post this thing and say, I'm going to be in this place. And I feel like you have to look at the requirements, but, you know, I almost feel like you don't have to record. I don't think you have to record it. Maybe you don't have to record it, and you can just say, what would you like to do? And if they could say pickleball courts or splash park or hockey. I don't know.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, she basically said we have to do that to get points. So I would do it for the points.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess that's part of the reality is, you know, what's the reality of trying to pull that off, Kate? I mean, you're kind of the one that understands this better than I do, for sure.
Well, how much documentation do you have to have? Can't we just say we went and talked and?
There's a link that says requirements. I forget where it is. It's somewhere in the application that it says, I don't know, maybe you can pull it up, Chris. I don't have the application in front of me, but there's a link in the application for a specific document. And I feel like if it's really just like going somewhere and asking a few questions to fulfill a requirement, I don't know, post it in Big Y or something. You know, it says post it in a grocery store or.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So here was the application. So.
It says, please see, please look at EEA's environmental justice policy. Is that a hyperlink? Nope, you're on it.
Right here.
Up higher. Nope, keep going. It was highlighted in blue. See that? Nope. Evidence of public
Right here.
meeting on proposed. I'm like pointing to it on my screen, and you can obviously see what I'm pointing.
No, I got it.
It says,
yeah, I'm right here.
Please look at EEA's environmental justice policy. What happens if you hit control and hover over that? Is it a link?
Probably not in this live. This may not be a live link here in this particular document, but we can.
Wait, what does that little paper say when you hover over it? It like came up with like a paper. What's that little blue paper? No, so that's got to be somewhere. The EEA's environmental justice policy.
Okay. Let me go back to another document then. This maybe we cut and pasted something from something here.
Oh, it's on mass.gov. You can
Yeah.
just like search for it. It's an executive order.
Come on. I'm losing my screen here for some reason. Hold on just a second, guys. Program application, program info. Let me try I was in a Word document. Let me see if I do the PDF one, if this will come up any better here.
I just went to mass.gov and it links to an environmental justice policy. I'm just quick scrolling through it to see if there's any reference.
Yeah, so this is the one in PDF that might have the hyperlinks live here. Hang on, right here. Let's see if it'll get me anywhere. Can you? No, that would be too much to ask for. Well,
I just looked up that exact thing, EEA's environmental justice policy.
Okay.
And there's a reference to on mass.gov to its environmental justice policy of the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs, which is who's sponsoring this grant, right?
Yep.
So maybe I'm just seeing if I could find.
For some reason, my hyperlink is not working on this. I don't know why, but.
I just went to, I searched for it in Google and it ended up at mass.gov.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, I think we'd have to look at that, you know, clearly so that we knew what we had to do. But I agree with Diana. I don't think we have to write any, you know, major thesis about this. I think it's just saying that we have done the outreach, we have consulted, you know, we spoke to, you know, people at, you know, whatever, Nonotuck Park or somewhere in Westfield or whatever, and this is, you know, these are the kinds of things that they would be interested in.
I was thinking we could also do Stanley Park. There's in Westfield, there's a lot of, I mean, I went there with my son and there was a pretty diverse group of people that were there.
Okay, good.
You know, posted in Big Y, and go, say we'll be at Stanley Park for 1 hour and maybe talk to a few parents that are at the playground that are
Okay.
using that. I don't know. That's just kind of what I envisioned
Yeah.
us doing.
Okay. Now, do you think that's something that, you and Dan might do, or?
Sure.
I think
Honestly, it's like, I really just think it's whatever will get the job done before the deadline.
Yeah, no, I know. I didn't want to dump everything on you is my point. I mean,
I don't feel dumped on at all.
okay. It's up to you. All right. Then we'll leave that in your hands. How's that?
Sure.
But any help you need with that, just holler. I mean,
I'll talk to Dan about it and see what we think is best.
I mean, it might be great to do it on a weekend, obviously, since that's probably when you're going to find more people hanging out.
Yeah.
And again, just keeping in mind, we literally have we have 3 weeks before the deadline, exactly today. So
I wonder if we need to know. At this point, I'm like, I don't even know if we need to know what the final scope of the project is going to be. I just felt weird asking questions about a specific project if that's not what we were actually going to do.
Yeah. No, I think it can be more open-ended. I would agree with that. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you could find out if there is a splash pad nearby that people go to, or even if there is one, they don't want to go there because whatever,
Right.
Maybe there's a reason the equipment is broken or something, so there could be something along that line, or, anything specific in a playground, certain kinds of playground equipment. I mean, I don't know, anything.
Sure.
Sure, we could go with any of that, I think, and at least we could try to outreach. And I don't know, I mean, I guess Nonotuck is the other possible place in the other direction.
I think you could probably do both in one day.
Yeah, I would think so. All right, well, we'll let that go. So I guess that's as far as we know. Now, I think we should, do we want to maybe just write up, half a dozen questions and then circulate them amongst ourselves, and maybe, Dan and Sonia would have any input, but I would really like to get some questions out. Certainly, well, let's see, deadline wise, we need to get some questions out probably by Friday to Melissa, to send her some questions on Friday, the 25th. So we'd have, enough time to have her input.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, Diana, go ahead.
Who's going to write that 2-page description?
Well,
someone.
It was dedicated to both Dan and Sonia to do that. They both said that they would work on it, and Dan was going to kind of take the lead on it, and Sonia was going to contribute. She started talking about some great things. I said, put those down, even if it's a paragraph or two. Just put that thought down on paper and shoot it over to Dan so he can incorporate it. And I'm guessing that it didn't happen, but our role would be more to try and, massage whatever gets written at this point. But, I think whatever I was talking about at the end there about the open space issue there in terms of the educational aspect, I mean, I think we could write up a little half a dozen sentences about that, and that would solve a piece of that issue that would be part of the narrative. But the bulk of the whole concept, they have to really tell us again. I mean, I heard it orally, but
Right.
I don't know what to say. I know everybody's busy, but nobody's any busier than anybody else at this point, as far as I'm concerned. So
yeah.
So that's about all I have to suggest.
Yeah.
Yep, go ahead.
I just feel sort of like maybe they're overwhelmed and they never really asked for this. What they wanted was playground equipment.
Yeah, well, I mean,
maybe that's why we're kind of stuck and flailing. Yeah.
Well, it could be. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, at the same time, they didn't say that they wanted to dump it. I mean, I think they would probably, honestly, I think they will probably turn around and go to CPC for playground equipment.
Right.
That's what they're used to doing. So
that, and we talked about how there's another grant. Is it the land grant that they said?
Not that.
Not the land grant. There's one in February that she suggested we could apply for park equipment through.
Yeah, there was something else. Land grant is really more land acquisition, which,
No,
Mhm.
there was something else.
it was,
I don't
yeah.
know what that is. Yeah.
I wrote
Yeah.
it down somewhere, but it was a grant that we had just missed the deadline for like last year,
Okay.
and we said that's something to think about for next year. But she mentioned it
Yeah.
as being like an opportunity for playground equipment. That's
Mhm.
when she told us we should go for the accessibility first and do the
Right.
playground equipment through that other grant.
Right. Yeah, there's a couple of other things we had on our list, on our master list, I think, about recreation grants and things like that. So,
Okay.
there are grants. I just think that they've taken sort of the easier route of going to CPC and,
Yeah.
pretty much doing that. And as long as CPC wants to dole out their money that way, I guess that's probably a good option. So,
I don't
um,
think CPC knows what's available in grants.
well,
I think,
true.
I'm sorry, I just don't think they do. I've watched it again and again with the library.
Yeah, no, it's true.
It's
So,
frustrating.
yep.
Yeah.
Land and Water Conservation Fund.
Okay.
That's
Hmm.
that's the
Yeah.
other. It's a due date of February 1st.
Okay. Okay. Yep. That's good. Okay. So anyway, I feel like we're making some steps, but boy, it's slow here. So I guess since I was at the parks meeting, why don't I just shoot a quick email off to Dan saying, look, have you and Sonia got anything on paper, and can you get us something by Friday so that we can at least have some thoughts to mull over on the weekend here? And if we have to have some questions for Sonia, we can, for Melissa, we can try to get something to her by Friday afternoon anyway, which would give her the following week to kind of respond.
Mhm.
But I think the ones around the environmental justice and then the path, I guess other issues in terms of the design, what that first year needs to include. It seems like a long time to have a whole year allocated for design work. I guess I don't.
Maybe it's more involved than what meets the eye, unless you have people like Sandtech who can come up with a design in like 3 days.
Yeah, I know, that's true. If we needed a real serious, engineering study like they had to do with the pickleball courts, that was like $7,000 just to do a drawing of the pickleball courts,
Yeah.
I have a question. This is just a technical thing, but the contractors who bid on the pickleball court, and when they find that the bids came in too high, can't they adjust their bid rather than just give up?
Apparently not.
No.
We asked that if there was a best in final or something like that, and no. There were, I think, 3 or 4 people that bid, companies that bid, and the one that we'd be interested in is the one that's only like 25,000 over. The other one was up as high as 160,000, so that was huge.
Wow. Yeah. Huh.
So apparently not. So we have to give them. Ed recommended that we have no later than a month, but 2 weeks preferably, to let them know whether we're rejecting everybody and starting over, or if we're going to try and accept one. And that was the kind of the goal, I think, that they're aiming for, is to try and accept one, but knowing that we can't say yes, we want you as a bidder, as a contractor, without having the money in place. So of the 115 that got given by CPC for this, there's been close to 10 already used in design. So there's, maybe 105 or something
Yeah.
available.
Okay. Tricky.
Yeah, it really is. So it's, Ed's got to have proof that there's another 25 or so $1,000 available before he would even tell them that we accept the bid. So that's really the challenge. Yep. So we'll be doing a little fundraising here and there. Got a couple of ideas with a couple of restaurants and things like that. A couple companies in town.
Yeah.
So we'll see. But it's going to be,
Who's the person on Parks who owns their Cruzana?
Sonia.
Oh, I didn't know that. I guessed, but yeah, so now we know.
And she also owns the Poke Bowl, also on Union Street. Two of them.
The what?
The Poke Bowl, which is this it's kind of a Hawaiian make your own salady kind of thing. You mix in
Haven't heard.
you mix in your base, whatever that may be, rice or something, and then veg and any kind of
Okay.
meat or fish.
Hmm.
It's like a big bowl of salad. So it's a Hawaiian style kind of thing, but that's right at the corner of Union Street, just a few doors down from Vera Cruzana. So
Okay.
anyway, so good. Well, I think, guys, that's about all we can do. Kate, if you want to just maybe circulate the 3 or 4 questions that we've got, and we can all think about anything. If there's something we want to add, we can do that to you by, before Friday morning. If we think of another question that we're confused about, if we look at these requirements again, and that'll be our last chance really to talk to Melissa. So yeah, I guess, just to have clarity again about the design, the level of, if we're simply making a path, I mean, it's just like, I just like with the cemetery walkway thing, the sidewalk, it doesn't seem terribly complicated, but maybe there's more to it that we're just not knowing that we have to deal with.
I'm just gonna send the questions because just to keep it simple, I'll send them to the 3 of us. Or is there other people you want me to include?
Yeah. Okay, that's fine. Yeah.
Do you want me to send them to Sunia and Dan?
Why don't we just to have them so that they're included, saying, look, these are the questions, we need to send something out. If you guys have questions about this grant, please, add to it here, but give them a turnaround time by, early Friday morning or something.
Okay. All right. Let me see the questions.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, I guess that's about all we can do. Now, let's just talk about, assuming we have to get together again a week from now would be the 30th, which is the parks meeting at 6 o'clock, I believe, at Conant. Would you guys want to join in on that? I could post a joint meeting.
This is the 30th. I mean, I think it makes more sense to meet with them than to try to meet ourselves. I kind of feel like we're going in circles a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll reach out to Mark and just say that, we'd like to join in, and I'll just try to make this a meeting at the same time at Conant at 6 o'clock on the 30th. And honestly, if we aren't much farther ahead by then, we may as well just scrap it because,
right.
I don't think any of us need to pull our hair out and try to do everything in the last minute. The whole idea was to get this done reasonably well ahead of time. But we'll see what they come up with. I think, like I say, if Mark comes up with a few things that he was going to have and Dan can pull together something, then maybe we'll be better off than we think we are. Okay. All right.
There's one other thing. So I got an email. I'm still trying to make it through all my emails, but they're having the municipal vulnerability, the MVP.
Yep.
Community listening at 7 o'clock on Thursday. So it's tomorrow.
Yep.
So
there's a Zoom link for that if people want to listen in and hear what they've been talking about. That's the committee that's been meeting to kind of talk about our MVP. It's not yet, at the grant stage. It's just basically what the committee is coming up with. It's the whole process that they've gone through. So hearing about that, and then if out of that they've got a project in mind or not for the MVP grant opportunity. So yeah,
I'm going to share that publicly to see if maybe there's other people that want to attend.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think we should share that like to the Southampton group? I mean, really the goal was to get public buy-in, right?
I guess so. I don't know. I wasn't part of that whole process. I don't know if it's up on our town website, to tell you the truth. It may
It's kind
be.
of like last minute.
Um,
It says it's a public listening session, so how public do they want it?
Good question. I don't know. I don't see any reason why it shouldn't be.
It says that I just looked at the flyer. It's an opportunity for members of the public to learn about the MVP planning process.
Okay.
So we should probably post it, right?
Well, that's what I'm wondering. It may already be, well, it won't be on the Southampton community page because Ed never posted on that. That's, kind of the crazy page some days. The Southampton main Facebook page, Randall usually posts stuff there, but I don't know that I've seen it there lately. Let me just check one thing while I'm talking to you. Let's see, on our homepage. Okay. My computer is being very slow here. Hold on. Yeah, it's posted on our big red letters on our town website. Public listening session. It's there. But usually Tammy Walunas will pick it up from the town website and put it out on the Southampton community page. But I haven't followed Facebook today to find out if anything's there, but it's at least on the town one for sure. Okay.
Okay.
So I plan on joining in for sure. Yep.
That'd be great.
Yeah. Okay. Well, other than that, guys, I think we may as well call it quits. We've gone as far as we can go with all this. So thank you for spending your time again. And I'll set up something for the 30th at Conant Park at 6 o'clock. And I'll reach out to Dan just now and just say, hey guys, sorry you missed the meeting. Reminder, we need something from you. Okay.
Did they know that they were supposed to come to the meeting?
Yeah, they were on the Zoom and yep.
Okay. So you'll reach out to Dan. I'll send the questions to you if I haven't already. I'll just include them just to say. Okay. I'll send them like right away.
You want me to do anything? Is there anything I can do?
I think the only thing would be just maybe those 3 or 4 sentences related to the neighborhood outreach and the climate resiliency education section part.
Okay.
Just following up on, the through the open space and
yeah, that's in the 2-page thing or
yeah, I mean it would be, probably a small paragraph in the 2-pager and under that educational section of that description, I guess. So we could just talk about how through the Open Space and Recreation Committee that, they received a neighborhood outreach grant rather, and, recently concluded a series of meetings with, landowners in town about conserving their land and blah, 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 something like that, and mention climate resiliency topic especially. But, half a dozen sentences would probably be fine. It's just a matter of touching base on that topic. But that would be it, I think, Diana, for now.
Okay, I'll do
But
that.
thank you for the Scorp stuff, and we'll once we know more what we're doing, we'll probably have to edit that back, but we'll see what they're talking about. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Good.
Well, if nothing else, let's take a meeting, our motion to adjourn rather, and so be it.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Okay.
Second.
All right.
So Fetterman, aye.
Fowles, aye.
Brooks, aye.
All right. We will consider ourselves adjourned. So thanks, guys, for joining
Thank
in,
you.
and we'll see you next week. And we'll, you know, if I get something from Dan, I'll circulate it around ahead of time. Okay.
Okay.
Thank
All right.
you.
Good.
Thanks a lot.
Mm.
Bye.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.